in my approach to strength and conditioning, my value, my center, um, uh, the goal is to be um, to be competent and um, where you had discipline, accountability, and work ethic are your kind of your North Star. And um, that's Samson. That's Dave. You know,
What's going on, Samson Strength Coach Collective listeners? On today's episode, we have another very special guest helping us remember 50 years of Samson equipment and celebrating Dave and Linda for such an amazing tenure and such an amazing career. On today's episode, we have Rick Huegli. I'm so excited to have you on. I've told you pre-show, the legacy episodes have been my favorite ones to do so far since I've become a host. So I'm really excited to continue with you, Rick.
thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here and participate in any kind of acknowledgement of Dave and Linda and the Samson Company. I'm flattered.
Yeah, well, it's just been so amazing to work for them. And then what I like about these legacy episodes too is I get to speak with people who have had the same experience I've had with Samson, which is just nothing but positive. It's just been a really, really fun experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, can you just give us a background of your career? What your career has been like in strength and conditioning, and then what you're up to now? We're curious too.
Yeah. Thanks. My career, went into college knowing I wanted to be a coach, figured, and I wanted to kind of coach college football. And, if you're going to work your way up the levels, you kind of, you need to be able to pay the bills. So I said, well, I guess I got to be a teacher. So, um, I kind of started off, went undergraduate at Western Michigan, got to work alongside the football program for a couple of years, taught a couple of years in Indiana, and then went on and got my master's at Bowling Green, where I was a grad assistant. And from there, taught another, coached at Findlay now University for a year, and then um, went and taught at Defiance High School in Northwest Ohio, and was there for a year. Met my my wife at the time, who was working at Wake Forest, and we decided to get married, and I knew I could live in North Carolina and like it better, and she'd like moving back to Ohio, and long story short, through her connection, I got hired as Wake Forest's first strength and conditioning coach, and worked there. It was in a sweet spot because Wake Forest had gone from not very good to having a lot of success, and I just happened to be the strength coach at that time. But I got to be a head strength coach, and never, and I thought that would lead me into becoming maybe a football connection, but it didn't work that way. Coaching is coaching, and an opportunity offered itself. So I was at Wake Forest for 2 years, and then in 1981, got offered the strength and conditioning job at Washington, University of Washington. And long story on how all that happened, but was there for 19 years, 19 years, from 81 to about 98, 99. So that's probably 18 years. And had a lot of fun. I got to grow up as a strength and conditioning coach, getting to do that. Probably the best thing was I was the head coach for all sports, but football was highest of priorities. And I got to work with a Hall of Fame legendary coach, Don James. And and they were really, really good football staff. So as long as I wasn't screwing up the players, I was doing all right. And over that time, I got to grow up and learn. And this was in the very beginnings of the National Strength and Conditioning Association. So yeah, I was a second year member for them. So got to learn and grow. Anyway, did that for, again, probably 18 years. And then as things happen in life, in coaching, the reaper is going to find you. And, and so we had a coaching change, and I didn't want to move all over the country to have some guy couldn't win 6 games, get me fired, and I have to move again. So I decided to stay in Seattle. I I figuring it out. I did some things I never thought I would do. I did worked as a personal trainer for a few years, and then an opportunity to work at a business that's now kind of defunct, Velocity Sports Performance, offered itself, and it was great opportunity. I did that for 6 years with the housing bubble in 2008. That went under, and and then very fortunately, timing is everything. I I got the opportunity to be the head strength and conditioning coach at Lakeside School in Seattle. Lakeside's a very prestigious private school, and and the kids are really interesting, and so I finished off my professional career, 15 years at Lakeside, and then I retired a year ago last July. So I'm kind of enjoying working on me, and still working on things professionally, in growth that I couldn't do if I were still teaching and coaching. But um, you kind of live your life in chapters, and I'm ready for that chapter right now. So
Well, congratulations on retirement. That's very exciting.
thank you. I'm kind of enjoying it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Always tell my wife I can't wait to retire, and I think I've got about another 30 years at least. So,
Oh, every time I got a paycheck, I was going, one day, I'm one check closer.
one more, one more.
Yeah.
What do you do? What's an average day for you in retirement?
Oh man, it's pretty boring. Get up, get through the newspaper really well, and then one of my priorities, my priority in retirement was I wanted to be able to work on uh, uh, my own physical fitness. I've always stayed on top of it, but I wanted to work on the things that were going to make me feel better. And so, I'm in the gym 6 days a week doing stuff. So that's, a lot revolves around that. And then I come home, and I'm, I've subscribed, I've signed up for probably take the rest of my life to get through it. A couple of course certifications that I'm just interested in. Whether I ever use it, I don't know if I'll ever get fluent, but um, the program is from Z Health, and it's a motor neuro brain movement uh, direction. And it's fascinating, and it stimulates me, keeps me in the mindset of training athletes, training people, having new answers and solutions to build on some of my experience. So that's that. And then, I get to go and do a lot of visiting, go see friends from around the country. And so I'm enjoying all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that sounds, you said boring. I think it sounds pretty fantastic. I would sign up for that right away.
I like it, but I could be pretty good at sitting around and killing time. And so I'm trying to not do that too well.
I'm sure it must be tough to transitioning from being a strength coach where you're doing something all day to basically having a wide open schedule and being able to do whatever you'd like.
You reach a certain age, and you go, there's just that many more birthdays coming. So, it helped me make the transition, having that perspective.
Mm.
Um, I had great relationships with kids, but, I loved the job. I had a good gig at Lakeside School, but, it just kinda reached a time that, like I said, the clock of, birthday starts hitting, and so it's okay to go do something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm very curious. I think back to my experience when I was first hired as a strength coach. It was very easy for me to come in and get the athlete's attention and have buy in already because there's been years of strength coaches ahead of us and
Mhm.
people who have already set those building blocks. To say you're the first full time strength coach at Wake Forest is pretty impressive alone. But then on top of that, having to battle a lot of myths about weightlifting, things that stuck around even when I was a kid about, if you lift, it'll mess up your shot, right? Or it'll make you less mobile and all these fallacies, essentially. What was that experience like going into Wake Forest and having to try to get people to buy into what you were selling?
Well, fortunately, at Wake Forest, the head football coach at Wake Forest was John Makovic, and, I probably came on board their 2nd year, and, he had I think, a brilliant assistant coach, a man named Dennis Haglin, who, uh, um, kinda set up some of the structure of the strength program. He was assistant coach, he wasn't strength coach, so they hired their first strength coach, and he kinda gave me a template, and it was solid, and my athletic background, I ran track, I ran for about 60 seconds in college, but I was, a teacher mindset, an educator, and, I wasn't all a stereotype of that time of a weightlifter, and so, it's kinda like sometimes if you don't know a lot, you can learn a lot, and, so I was given good guidance, I stayed kinda patient with the kids, you build relationships, and they're gonna listen, and they had a foundation, and then they won. They had a really, really, really good first the 2 years I was at Wake Forest. Um, I just was really lucky to work with good coaches and good athletes and get to learn and grow through the process of the growth of strength and conditioning.
Well, winning always helps, right? It makes it a
Oh,
little bit easier.
yeah, and I worked in the weight room. I did weightlifting. I, had a, um, education and an exercise, education and was an athlete, and so, I mean, it's a no-brainer that the weight room is gonna be a benefit to you, you know?
But people didn't know that back then. They kind of, again, assumed it could probably hurt you more than it could help. I remember even when I was, again, some small myths I had to deal with when I first started lifting when I was 12. My parents freaked out and they thought I
Yeah,
was going to stunt my
yeah,
growth and break every bone in my
yeah,
body.
yeah. Well, Wake Forest had invested in, we're gonna get around to some of this, but they had invested in, having a weight room and equipment and, so when a university makes an investment like that, they believe in something, so
Exactly. Well, again, we think back to your journey, and obviously, you're on the show because you're a big part of helping Samson to succeed. When did you first encounter Samson equipment?
oh, man, probably 1986, 87, 86. I was at a, um, Southern California strength coaches conference that was put on by Jerry Simmons, one of the people you'll probably talk with. And Jerry was a go-getter, dynamic personality, really, really kind of cool. And he put this clinic on and had half of the Pac-10 strength coaches speak, and the other half showed up just to kind of hang out. And if you're with Jerry, you were going to have a good time. So we did that, but he had vendors, and he had uh, Dave Schroeder was there with this was probably they were 2 3 years into the business probably at that point in time, And, so I met him there, and I don't exactly remember if that was also at the same time I was, planning on building a new weight room at University of Washington. I believe I met him before we knew for sure, and, uh, and I just Dave is very welcoming, very capable, very I think, he was on top of building a relationship, and, I think that's the beginning of, you gotta trust the people you're gonna work with, and Dave made that easy, easy.
Absolutely. What was your first impression of Dave when you first met him?
Uh, a competent guy, a, uh, friendly, warm. He listened. I gotta say, he'd ask questions, but he was a good listener, um, as I built my relationship with him, he made me because of his, I don't know, his confidence, his experience, um, he could handle my questions and anxiety when it came down to having to plan and put together a weight room, um, which kinda the project we were doing was pretty daunting because the athletic director told me, "Listen, we're only gonna do this one time, and we gotta get it right," and you gotta find the right people, and he was the right people for me.
No, I totally understand what you're saying, and even looking at small projects I've been a part of, which is maybe 3 racks and a little bit of flooring. I'm very anal and very particular about how things have to go. So if it's a large project, I can only imagine, like you said, kind of the anxiety and the reassurance you'd need with a project like that. So can you talk to me about that University of Washington project? Because Brian explained to me that it was a really, really big initial project for Samson, and they were really happy to be able to help you create that weight
Mhm.
room. So, what was the project? How was the process of actually going through everything, and how was it working with Samson?
Yeah, it was great work with Samson. It it made the job, of filling in that weight room and making it a great weight room, so easy for me. I mean, I just didn't it just I found my guy, and that's the guy I wanted. Um, um, the project we were building, and this was at the time, everybody builds a new one, and it's kinda cool. I got to in doing homework and research, I got to visit a variety of universities and check out their equipment, but also their space design, and, met with for one of the projects, we took architects with us, so they had a clue of what a weight room is supposed to be and look like. So anyway, we had that kind of commitment to it. It was going to be a 14,000 foot facility, I think, at the time. And again, the athletic director told me we're only building one. We're not, so we have to do a good job with it.
You've got
And
one shot. Yep.
yeah, yeah. And so, I got the architects got a plan. We had a certain space. We want the biggest that we could get, and in the space that we had allotted. So they got they figured out space and some of the cool amenities for make it a decent place. But then we had to equip it, and and from there you got to talk to people. And I had built the relationship with Dave. And one of my big concerns, I mean, he'd ask questions and he'd listen. I had a pretty your space kind of defines some of how you're going to lay it out, and the number of items that you're going to have, and so um my I had a clue of the big rocks that I wanted to have, the power racks, and we did free benches, and it's laid out way different than they lay them out now. Um, and and he figuring out how to lay it out. We got this space. What's the best way to lay it out? And I had, he had the answers for me. He had the computer that could take the equipment, move it around, give it back to you. And nobody had anything like that I talked to. I didn't even talk to too many people because David um, made me very confident uh, that he could help me with that. That was a high priority, that you're going to help me get this thing done right. And then the Samson equipment was great equipment. When you buy something, you don't want to buy it once. You don't want to have to buy it again and again and again. And so, um, and I met Dave maybe at Jerry's conference, but then, every year I'd see him at the NSCA conferences. And so, I got to see a lot of his equipment, got to build a relationship with him. I'm certain that's the order of how things went, and it was great equipment. So, you know,
Easy to choose,
it was easy.
uh,
It was easy. It
what,
was easy.
what was it? Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, because I don't know if I'll come back to remembering this. So, and we can bounce back to Washington. When I took the job at Lakeside School, um, I lucked out. The weight room was already tricked out. It was the coach before me came from the same perspective, and all the equipment was the Samson equipment. So, I'm a lifer on Samson. It just made it easy. And again, stuff doesn't break. So,
Yep.
it lasts forever. And
Did you
that's
reach out
the
to
way I
Dave
like
right
it.
away when you found out it was all Samson equipment?
Uh, Dave was kind of out of it. It was more then at that time, Brian and Scott. And yeah,
But that's got to be exciting because I remember going into a new weight room we had at Texas Tech, and it was from another company that I'm not a very big fan of.
yeah,
And ultimately, it was like this coach went down the catalog and just literally picked every single thing that he could possibly buy,
yeah,
and we could not
yeah,
be more misaligned in our values of what we wanted out of a weight room. And so I ended up calling the company and saying, "Can we get a refund for half of this stuff?" And of course
yeah,
not. Uh, I mean, obviously I should have known my answer, but it's frustrating to go inherit a space that basically you don't really want and it doesn't really fit
right.
with what you would like. So I'm very happy to hear that that was not the case for you at the high school.
Oh yeah, no, it was fabulous. But it's, and then we we built a new space. It's pretty close to the space that we had. It was very much a very nice area, and so we had to have some customizable things to help make our space a little more efficient. And, you know, Brian and Scott were, we can do that. We got that, and I knew they could. You just tell them exactly what you need, and they'll figure it out. So, and that's the other cool thing with Samson. You can, you know, however you want it done, they can figure it out. Now, kind of back to Washington, I want to, my challenge in doing all of this was, we were a state institution and stuff has to go on a bid. And that was my other big anxiety because to a state purchaser, a bench is a bench, a test tube is a test tube, and so you got to spec it out. And Dave helped me with specking out the kind of caliber of equipment that we had, that we wanted. And I mean, I spelled it out to thickness of the steel and, all that stuff. I mean, I wrote everything for him to be successful. Unfortunately, when we went to the buyer said, "Nah, there's another guy that bid who's local and he's got the low bid." And I went to my supervisor, and it's probably the best thing this guy ever did for me in my time at Washington. Um, he went with me to the head of purchasing at the University of Washington, and we brought, because we were anxious about the other guy with the bid, being upset, and he's got due cause to put up a stake. and he came in there, and we talked with the purchaser. The purchaser was a friend of the athletic department, but this guy said, "Yeah, I can do this. I can do this," but he hadn't done it before. And ultimately, thank goodness, the uh, the head of purchasing said, "Our athletes deserve the best and to be safe." And so that's how we were able to finally, to my relief, get to completely um, go with Samson.
Yeah, I've heard so many, especially since hosting this podcast, so many stories about the purchasing department,
Oh,
and
it's, it's political.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
bureaucratic.
But it's so interesting to me, and the common theme I've seen amongst it for sure is that all the companies who would underbid Samson on these projects no longer exist or really struggled with what they were trying to do. There was
Mhm.
an amazing story that Brian told me about a showdown they ended up having with equipment with another company that again doesn't exist anymore, and it's so funny to me because these companies would come in and bid maybe 5,000 under on a it's a
Yep.
minimal amount for a large project, and of course purchasing is going to say, well, let's just save $5,000 on this, and then all of a sudden, like you said, you're going to have to buy a whole new weight room within the next 15 years, 10, 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it, the guy couldn't have gotten it done in time. He couldn't, just all of those things. I mean, you got a timeline when you want to get it done as well. And so, it was a team effort getting the thing done, but, um, you got this great space, but you got to have good equipment. And ultimately the job is your athletes are going to use it. And, you know, if you can't train very well, then you're looking for a new job. So yeah.
Exactly. Like you said, I'm sure there's some anxiety going into that meeting, hoping it could work out. Was there a moment in the meeting where you're like, all right, we've got him, we're good, we can definitely go with Samson?
Oh, they really pushed me on safety, and and I kind of just hit. There was customizable stuff. There was some of it customizable. Honestly, the thing that I probably Samson did the best that I really needed to have was their combination bench. Something simple as that, but I really, really, that was big, and it was a key feature of how we were going to use that weight room. And and the guy couldn't have done it the same way. He couldn't have done it. And and I had seen what Samson had, and then I knew that they could, for other things, build it the way I wanted it built. And again, trust. They had experience. He had credibility among my peers. There were other, Jerry. I mean, there's a bunch of us, and you'll talk to who were very loyal to Samson Equipment because you could count on them, and you could count on them. It was going to be really good. They're going to do it. The customizable ability, um, all of that, and he was West Coast too. That probably helped.
Which
Yeah,
helps for sure. You
yeah.
know, I,
Although we're in West Coast, South Alaska, so yeah,
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 certainly a little bit of a different West
yeah,
Coast when you're
yeah,
talking about completely north and completely south
yeah,
within America. But
yeah.
one of the things I've always heard about business is just that it's best the best advertising you can possibly have is word of mouth.
Hmm.
What was it that other people were saying about Samson? Was it the trust factor? What set them apart from other companies?
Well, I think probably again meeting Jerry Simmons, he says you got to talk to Dave Schroeder, and you know, Jerry knew some things, and had a good, evidently a good relationship with Dave, and then meeting Dave, he's got answers to your questions and questions that help you get your own answers, and um, so that was the start, and uh, and I needed to turn somewhere, and I needed to have confidence, and I wasn't into screwing around with finding play in the field, so to speak, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm just so happy to hear that everybody kind of had the same impression of Samson, and it's one of those things where people will ask me when I host the podcast, like, "Would you actually recommend working with Samson?" I was like, "Yes," like there's no doubt because they're
Yeah.
such an amazing company to work with. And I remember when I got to meet Brian for the first time at the CSCCA. I mean, I walked in the door and here's one of the biggest guys in the company just sitting down on the couch, and we spoke for 30, 45 minutes,
Yeah.
just hanging out, waiting for everybody else to get back. And when you call Samson, it's the owners who pick up, it's the people who
Hmm.
run the company. It's not outsourced to other people. So I really love the family feel of the company. In your opinion, how did Samson influence the field of strength and conditioning?
Oh, well, you kind of spoke to it a little bit. I mean, you could depend on them. They were always going to be around. They were always, I don't care where in the country we had a national conference, Dave was there. He was there with his stuff. Uh, he made relationships. And so me and my peers, we'd go into the booths, we'd go into you know, the area with all the vendors, and we'd hang out near the Stamps Rack. We wouldn't bother Dave, but it was just good stuff, and I think we helped sell him some stuff. But we were users, so we are happy. But they were always there, and it's you know, I mean, he proved that they're not going to go away, um, and he explained their process. We all got to understand. You know, in Las Cruces, right?
Yep.
Las
Yep.
Cruces, the process, the people that are working there, the size of the company, um, always talked fondly and favorably about the, the people that are working for him. And it was truly, um, a family feeling with that company. I mean, he communicated that. So, and then in my dealings with Dave, and then he gave Scott more responsibility, and Brian, and I mean, they're just like Dave. They're warm, they're welcoming, they're easy to work with. Um, and they get stuff done. So um, because when you got an issue, you want to pick up the phone, and it's always better to talk to people and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's just, I, again, with the same company that I mentioned earlier, like I was infuriated and I would call him every day because
Mm.
this guy would not get back to me. He would not. I mean, I literally at one point was just like, look, if you just pick this equipment up, you can have it for free. And he was like, well, we can do that. Right. And then it took 2 more weeks of me calling for him like every day for him to say, well, I don't know if we can do that. And it was just like, just be straight with me and it's fine. But it's something rare that you deal with companies that, the bottom line can be profit for a lot of these companies. But to me, the bottom line of Samson is providing a quality experience and a quality weight room. So I think it really stands out and makes a difference in the work that they do.
Well, and some of the questions that you fast forwarded me, I thought about, you know, part of what sticks. So in my approach to strength and conditioning, my value, my center, um, uh, the goal is to be um, competent, and um, where you had discipline, accountability, and work ethic are your kind of your north star, and um, that's Samson, that's Dave. There was discipline. I knew that we're going to make this right. We're going to fix it, and we're going to get it. And you communicate. There's respect among the people that work for Samson. That leaked through. He's accountable. I mean, a company, you know, they're going to pick up the phone. They're going to get it. I mean, because it's relationship, and obviously there's a work ethic, because here you are 50 years later. So, and that's any organization. any a football team plays to the character of its leader, its head coach. Just it's a given. Any organization plays to the character and influenced by the leadership at the top. And if you're fortunate enough to be in a good organization, you got great leadership. And that's Dave in spades, and he's passed it on. And I talk to Brian and Scott every once in a while. How's Dad doing? He goes, "Oh, he still has his 2 cents in, and he's still, I think, keeping it on the straight and narrow for as far as the core values for the company."
I think that's almost impossible not to. You built
Yeah,
this company from the
it's his
ground up. I
baby.
think it'd be very hard to kind of give up on it.
Yeah.
What was your experience like working with Dave versus working with Brian and Scott? Because it's funny for me that you've worked with both of them throughout the process.
Uh, I worked with Scott more before I worked with Dave, and I think Scott was more into sales, and I was, and sometimes sales is, they got a spiel and Dave was a little more, I don't need to sell you. um, and Scott wasn't ever trying to sell me. I mean, I was actually, um, I wasn't a repeat customer a lot because I bought it once and I didn't need to buy it again. I mean, they helped me when I did need something, but they weren't making, they weren't making their living off of me and my facilities after, you know, the intention. So, um, I'd see Scott. Scott was, I'd see him, socially. We just stayed kind of connected. Then more when I got into high school and had some things I needed at Lakeside School. Uh, I'd call Scott and he'd pass me over to Brian. And it soon became Brian's the guy that gets stuff done. So yeah, they were good. They were great. When we moved from the old facility into our new facility at Lakeside School, my anxiety was, how do I move all this stuff and get it set up right and this and that? And so they sent a guy to just oversee and get it reinstalled. And that was good because that isn't usually how how it goes. Sometimes you're on your own to make it fit perfectly. And they again, I they were supportive for me, and I think I worked through Brian to get that part done, and the he had some individuals that were leads with stuff that were very good, very responsive. I mean, it just, trust is kind of the thing, and they took care of me with all of that. And then, so I have high trust. And it's easy to do this podcast talking about them. I sound like I'm a plant for the company, but no, they earned it.
It seems to be a universal experience for everybody. It was like
Yeah,
you said, it almost sounds like you were hired and paid a kickback on the side to help support Samson, but no, it's just how the experience has been. And it sounds to me like a lot of your experiences have really just been relieving of anxieties. Like there's always a stress with the new facility, but with how they approached everything, they were just able to kind of, I can't think of the right word, abate or help lower those anxieties by how they approach the process.
100%. I looked through your booklet that you sent me, and the first third of it, it's exactly how they dealt with me uh, in 1987. Um, it's probably more refined. The company definitely has expanded its products and what it does and what it can do, um, to probably be a full service facility provider, a little differently than back in the day for me. That's which is normal growth, but um, yeah, the process is solid. It's not different. It's not different.
I love it, and again, it just goes to show why Samson has been able to celebrate 50 years. If you had to describe Samson in one word, what would it be?
Oh man. Um, Consistent, constant.
I
Um,
love that.
yeah. Um, I would also say relationship. I mean, I got, a lot of one, but those two are, I think, hand in hand. Um, um, Trust, again, when I'm hanging out there and the athletic director says, we're going to do this one time, you got to do it the right way. You, and I don't know everything. I needed some trust. And that's the basis of the beginning for me with Samson. Dave says, "Oh, yeah, we can do that. We do this, we do that." I didn't. If I had questions, you couldn't bother him enough. So um, he just wanted to make sure it was going to be good because his name's on the product, his name's on the company, and I think it's also one of the great things about being, you know, not a corporate. I mean, they're the the founder's still involved. His kids are still involved. Probably many of the employees have been there forever and ever. And so you're going to be consistent, because you're taking care of people. So those are I guess I know that to be true as well as I would assume that to be true. But I know it to be true because I talked to Dave and Scott. I have over the years.
I think it's a really good thing when you ask somebody to describe something in one word and they've got a million positive words to come back with. It's tough
Yeah,
to narrow it
it's
down to
true.
just one thing.
That's because it's a hard question.
Yeah, it is. It is for sure. Do you have any funny stories with Dave or with Brian or Scott? I've heard some pretty good ones, so I just wanted to see if you have anything in your back pocket.
Oh, if there's any funny stories, it's just um, at conferences, hanging out with Scott a little bit. He's the sales guy. He's a good social guy, but no, Dave, you got just Dave was just solid, um, consistent. Uh, he wasn't into the goofing around nonsense that me and my peers were in when we would see him. But um, no, I don't. No, I mean he just, you know,
He was
you,
there for the work.
yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
there for the
that's what you
job. Yep.
wanted him for.
Yep. Yep.
You wanted him to help you. He's a spoke in the wheel of facility development and an important spoke, kind of like a strength coach is a spoke in the wheel of a program or a team. It ain't all about you. It's about being competent at what you do to be a part of the whole team success. So,
Absolutely. Well, what would you like to say directly to Dave and Linda as they celebrate 50 years?
oh man, uh, thanks for being discipline, accountability, and having a great work ethic. Um, People in this field, strength and conditioning, and it's changed into many tentacles of fitness and performance. Um, they really appreciate having somebody that they can go to, and they know it's going to be there for another many years. And you want to you've developed it into a trustworthy brand, and congratulations on that. That's hard work, and it happens because you're a high caliber character, and I mean that's leadership starts at the top. So congratulations on your fundamentals, and you've built a great company, and you've got a lot of loyal people that are very grateful that you could help them solve their problems.
No, I love that. And I think that's a fantastic message, and I truly appreciate it. Again, like you said, it's very hard work. It's hard to do. It's hard for a company to last 5 years, let alone 50 years, and know that there's even better stuff on the horizon. So I think it's very cool to see that.
Got to work at it hard. I mean, I know a little bit enough about businesses. You got to work at it really hard every day. Yeah, or your reputation goes away really fast, as does the business. So 50 years, that's getting after it.
Absolutely. Well, Rick, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your stories with us. I really appreciated it. And again, these you did not disappoint me whatsoever. These continue to be my favorite episodes we do. So I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a privilege and an honor, and to be able to even get to say thank you to Dave and Linda and Scott and Brian and the whole Samson organization is really flattering that I get to do that. They're important part of really important part of my journey in this field. So um, yeah, don't minimize that. That's a big deal.
Well, I know they feel the same because they have told me directly so. So I can share that sentiment back from them. So
Cool.
thank you, Rick, so much. I
Good.
appreciate you.
You're welcome.